So this week with The Social Network, obviously the story it tells is not one that represents a significant historical event, or it is about real people, but it's not worldwide historically significant. But I wanted to use this movie as our opportunity to talk about the internet and social media at large.
Yeah, this is kind of a first. I mean, we're almost to the end of this series, but this is a first in that it's kind of the first subject that we're talking about that I actually, have experience and memories of from my own life.
Oh, you're right. 9/11 we talked a little bit about, but you said you were kind of too young.
Right. Yeah. But with Facebook, that was in my lifetime, and I was at the perfect age as it was coming out to experience it and being a part of it.
Yes. And but before we break it down, I want to actually cut to a conversation Logan and I had on the Track Nerds podcast when we were talking about our favorite movies, best movies of the decade. And spoiler alert, if you haven't listened to those episodes, it was Logan's favorite movie of the decade. So we're going to cut right now over to us talking about it over there, and then we'll pick back up with some of the historical accuracies and some of the broader issues. So listen to that real quick.
Ow.
All right. So my number one, which I will say it went back and forth between this movie and Hell or High Water. Okay. I did change it actually several times where I had Hell or High Water at number one. But I think that this movie is actually, I enjoy them about the same amount. I think that this movie is actually a better made movie though. So this is a movie, it's a 2010 movie written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by David Fincher. The Social Network is my number one movie of the decade.
Interesting. And so you don't listen to probably as many movie podcasts as I do. This was the overwhelming consensus best movie of the decade from the critics I listened to.
I did think that it was probably a basic bitch choice.
I don't mean to imply that.
What can I say? I love Aaron Sorkin dialogue. I absolutely love Aaron Sorkin dialogue. It can't be beat. David Fincher visually is an unparalleled director. The music it's Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross from Nine Inch Nails. They do this really cool, understated, but it's still, you can still obviously hear it, but it's not in your face score, but it's absolutely perfect for what the movie is. The music is there when it needs to be. It's not when it's not. The editing in this movie is awesome. The way that they cut between the two depositions, and then they almost do reverse shot, but it's across time. So they'll do a shot where someone will say, oh, this is what happened. And then they show a thing that happens back in the past in a flashback, and they cut back and you see someone else's reaction to having that same memory. You have the whole unreliable narrator kind of, because everyone's telling their side of the story and, what they perceive to be the truth from back in the day. And then also the subject matter. It's about the founding of Facebook. And I think that almost, so when this movie came out, I didn't know if it was going to age that well, because I figured, when Facebook becomes less popular, maybe this movie won't hold up as much. But I think that that's wrong for two reasons. One, I think that this movie is going to outlast Facebook. I think that this movie could have been made about anything, and with the people who are working on it and the quality of the filmmaking and the quality of the story that's being told, I don't think that Facebook is really incidental. It doesn't really matter.
The movie's not actually about Facebook.
No, It's not about Facebook. It's about greed, and it's about friendships. But at the same time, in 2010, I thought that maybe in a few years, Facebook wasn't going to be that big of a deal anymore. People would probably gravitate away from it, just like they did Friendster or MySpace or any other social network that kind of went under. But I mean, now more than ever, with the advent of, fake news and search algorithms and, people living in their bubbles on social media, I think it's almost more relevant now than it was in 2010. I think that social media in general has a bigger grip on our culture and on our society, specifically in the United States, than it ever did in 2010. So I think that the subject matter, it doesn't need Facebook for the movie to be successful, but also Facebook is more relevant now than it was even when the movie came out.
I will admit that I was wrong on that big part right there. So in 2010, and I am going to kind of undercut some of your points here, I think. But so in 2010, I put The Social Network as my number 7 movie from 2010. And
wow.
My argument at the time where I was wrong is I didn't think it would hold up well because of the fleeting nature of social media platforms like MySpace up to that point. Now, I was dead wrong on that point, specifically with Facebook, and also kind of to your point, it's not even about a specific social network. So begin based on all these other podcasts saying like, I forget there's one, I think it's The Big Picture, or I think specifically, basically they're talking about it. They had like 3 critics on. They all had their whole list. They did exactly what we're doing. All 3 basically said, yeah, Social Network, no question. Like, it's not even close as for the best movie of the decade. And so I was like, okay, I'll rewatch it. I'll rewatch it, fully expecting it to at least make my top 20. I just, I'll let it leapfrog some stuff. And I rewatched it, and I was like, kind of to your point, it is very good filmmaking. I love Aaron Sorkin dialogue. Fincher's direction is great. I just don't find the story in the film that compelling. I mean, again, it's great. It's good. I like the movie. I don't dislike the movie at all. It just doesn't do it for me.
I almost don't think the story is the point, though.
Well, it's the point for me with watching movies, though.
I know. But for me, like the cool editing, the cool visuals. Again, this movie has probably 3 scenes in it that I would say I could put up for best scene of the decade. The opening scene in the bar where he's having a conversation with his girlfriend. With the boom 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 boom, the dialogue in that scene it's quintessential Sorkin dialogue.
In the dorm room, coming up with the thing that night.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, that's awesome.
Man, okay.
The second one that I was thinking of is the crew race, where they have in the Hall of the Mountain King, but it's like that really like distorted, like kind of like grimy version of it. The Hall of the Mountain King version, the Trent Reznor version. And they lose the race, and then they go into the clubhouse and find out that
Facebook's gone.
Facebook that they've been trying to shut down is now in Europe. But that the scene where they're racing specifically is awesome filmmaking, awesome direction from David Fincher, awesome music from Trent Reznor. And then the other scene that I think is very underrated in this movie is the very last scene, where there's no dialogue, there's no snappy edits, there's only one character on screen. It's Jesse Eisenberg, and he's just sitting there refreshing the page for the friend request that he sent the girl at the beginning of the movie, because it's finally him trying to basically participate in this social network that he has created.
Well, and that this whole thing has actually been about that.
And the whole time, all he has really wanted was to distinguish himself and to show her that he's not an asshole, that to get her approval, basically.
That's fascinating, because I find that exact moment a bit of an eye roll. Like, I think it's too on the nose. I think it's too on the nose.
I mean, I guess.
No, hey, I'm in the minority here. Most people agree with you.
I love it. So you said you went back and rewatched this. How many times do you think you've seen this movie?
Once in the theater in 2010 and once like 3 months ago.
Oh, okay. I watch this movie probably once a month.
Okay.
I'm not even exaggerating. It's on Netflix right now. I've had it I think I had a hard copy at one point, but like there have been countless times where I'm like, I got some time. I'm gonna sit down and watch a movie. I'm just going to go through, probably watch something that I've already seen, just kind of shut the old brain off for a little bit. Oh, what looks like it's good? Oh, Social Network? Yep, that's going on. Yep, I'm putting that on.
Interesting.
And that happens probably once a month. So I've seen this movie probably over 30 times. And that's not exaggerating.
And I don't think I could. I think some of the awkwardness and the uncomfortable situations, I don't think I could make it rewatchable, even though, again, I like the movie. I'm not saying I don't like the movie. But yeah, I don't find it that rewatchable either because like it's just I feel so bad for Andrew Garfield's character the whole time and just all those awkward situations and even like the Winklevoss twins going to the dean, which is kind of like overstepping their place and they really shouldn't have done that. Like all those awkward moments, I cringe. I can't watch them.
I don't know. Even an awkward moment written in Aaron Sorkin dialogue. I could, oh man, I eat it up. I eat it up. It's so good.
We kind of went like I think it's kind of funny. I think we were pretty much in lockstep through 9 picks each, and then we both questioned the other one's number one. Like we were all good. I'm like, yeah. No, dude. So Ex Machina, man. Movie of the decade, consensus.
Yeah. Oh, so let me address the Oscars for this movie because I got some stuff to say about the 2010 Oscars and about this movie specifically. So this movie won 3 Oscars. It won for Best Adapted Screenplay because it's based on a book, The Accidental Billionaires, which I haven't read, but I heard is actually pretty good. It won for Best Original Score. So obviously you get Sorkin and Trent Reznor are getting Oscars. And then we get into the Best Picture and Best Director. Best Picture went to King's Speech, which was not on my list. Was it on your list? No, it wasn't because no one likes or cares about that movie.
I had it ranked 3 higher for 2010, though.
This garbage. The Social Network should have won Best Picture in 2010, and David Fincher should have won for Best Director, and not. So
that was
Tom
The Fighter,
Hooper.
though. That was my number 4, so I would have had The Fighter. Should have won.
I don't know. I think either way, King's Speech. I don't know.
That's another critic consensus one where most people considered it an overrated Best Picture winner, and I've rewatched it with that in mind. I'm like, I really like it. It's a really good movie.
But see, the British royal family stuff is right up your alley, though.
You're right. And so
I don't know, but yeah. And then Best Actor, obviously Colin Firth won for Best Actor that year as well. And then cinematography, it did not win, but that's because Inception came out that year. So
that was a tough one, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. And then sound mixing, it lost to Inception as well. But yeah, snubbed by King's Speech.
And then another very high one, though, a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 86 audience score. So right up there.
Ow.
So before we get into some of the accuracies and inaccuracies of the film itself, I wanted to, again, just kind of take the broader scope of the internet and social media in general. And again, like you said, we can kind of talk about this both from our personal experiences and then kind of the stuff that you know is happening behind the scenes. So my rough understanding of the beginnings of the internet does just kind of go back to the beginnings of computers into the 1950s. And then when you have all these kind of places of higher learning, whether it's a military operation or a college that wanted a way to communicate with each other. And so they did kind of started figuring out ways to connect these computer hubs and share information. That's kind of a super simplified way to think about it.
Right. Basically, it started off, and it's kind of a gray area thing as far as like what is considered the beginning of the internet. Basically, it started out as just trying to connect computers so they could talk to each other, but a lot of times it was a proprietary thing. So, only computers that were, the exact same like make and model or the same make could communicate.
Right. Otherwise they're not speaking the same language.
Right. So then it became, kind of standardizing communication between computers so that, if you have a Dell and I have a Macintosh, that we can, communicate back and forth. And then basically the beginnings of that became the beginnings of what we know today as the internet.
Right, and it just got to where that network of computers talking got bigger and bigger and bigger over a few decades, to the point that by the time the public became involved with it, it was just a big enough network. It's like, oh, well, why not let regular users tap in to this same network that kind of the military and colleges and stuff have been using previously?
Yeah.
It just kind of opened it up to where regular people could get on it. So when we first got on the internet as a society in the 90s, it had existed for a while. It just wasn't something that was really set up or capable of handling the loads at first. And the story I always tell, and I've been telling this since college, but it's like the more time goes by, the sillier it seems. And of course, I'm getting older in real life anyway, because most people do. And but it's just fascinating. And then when I'm in an old person's home, far in the future, it's going to be fun to tell a story that seemed kind of cute when I was 25 telling the story. But when I'm 95, it's going to be like, oh dang, he's old. So my senior year in high school, the school got its first external dial-up modem. So we had computers already that we just did word processing and stuff on. They basically bought a modem that would obviously be built into the computers in just, probably a few months after this or, years after this. And it was just sitting next to the computer, could plug into the back, and then that would plug into the phone line. So it was an external dial-up modem. And that was my senior year of high school. And I remember thinking, too, that Yahoo's a weird word. So, I remember first hearing about Yahoo at that time, too. And what else I thought was funny then, too, my freshman year of college, email was brand new. I think WSU was offering students, if you wanted, you could sign up for an email address through the school. But it was so new. And again, anything that's new, you don't know to what extent you even need it. So my roommate had an email address, and I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just use yours too. We'll just share an email address because they're brand new and who knows any different. And the other big thing that's changed since then too, because I still have some of my, old IDs from the late 90s is, so the thought at the time was, oh, well, whatever you do not make your email address your real name. And so that's why all the addresses from back then are a little goofier.
Was it like a potential identity theft thing?
Yep. We were, again, wasn't an idea we came up with. That's what the, so-called authorities were advising, or whoever in the zeitgeist somewhere was, don't use your actual name as your email address because reasons. And so...
Oh, okay. And so that's why even to this day, your username and screen names are all Count of Monte Cristo stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I know, so it seems silly now, but it's because I just didn't want to change it. So it's just easier to keep using the thing I've been using since the late 90s than to try to, I don't know. And my name's more common anyway, too. So it doesn't seem like it wouldn't be a big signifier to try to claim. Anyway. Now, and of course, then you, on the other side, probably really don't remember a time before the internet.
Yeah, and this is kind of again, with the, we were talking about with 9/11, I do remember growing up, the first few years of my life, we didn't have internet. I think I was probably 6 or 7 before we even had a desktop computer in our house.
Okay.
But yeah, again, basically my whole life I've had access to the internet.
But you still recognize the dial-up sound?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Which people probably 5 years younger than you would probably no longer even recognize that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Facebook itself was kind of interesting too. So at first, Facebook was just for students. So it almost kind of evolved in the same way the internet itself evolved, which is why it's kind of probably a good one to talk about. So it was kind of first at schools, for specifically colleges.
Yep.
Then you had a school email address. I remember working at the DVD store here in town, and I think it was Cody was going to set me up with a Facebook, but I basically couldn't because I wasn't, you had to be a minor or a student at the time.
Yeah.
The fact that I was, 25 or 30 and out of school is nope, you're not even allowed to have a Facebook address or account yet.
Yeah. Well, because it started out, you had to have it, it was only the schools that it was, at, you had to have an email address from those schools. So when it started off, harvard.edu, you had to have a Harvard email address. And then as it progressed, I do remember it. I think when I had my first Facebook account, it was, you did have to have a .edu email to sign up with.
Okay.
Which anymore is not the case.
No, right. Well, right, because didn't it have? I should have looked. Does it have 2 billion users?
Yeah. So
Facebook
I was
now?
I was gonna bring that up, but so on the poster for this movie, it says, it's got the tagline, "You don't get to 500 million friends without making a few enemies." And at the time, it was oh, whoa, 500 million. That's so many Facebook users. Yeah, it's over 2.5 billion users now.
Right. So 5 times what it was then. And that's even with some people kind of, some people are not extensively, some people are kind of dropping away from it. But then, what I've noticed, from the coaching side of things, where communication with athletes, Facebook used to be a viable form to communicate with your athletes. Well, Gen Z isn't on Facebook.
Right.
They've moved on.
Yeah.
It's now I use Facebook to contact the parents, and
Yep.
the high school students now couldn't care less about Facebook.
Yeah.
Most of them have accounts because you kind of need a Facebook account almost as like an email address
Right.
in a lot of ways, because it logs onto apps for you.
Yep.
So it's like that's kind of the purpose it serves now, which of course that was kind of a brilliant move by them too, to kind of stay relevant in that regard.
I basically only have my Facebook account to use Facebook Messenger.
Exactly. Oh yeah, in that one. Yep.
So,
Messenger and logging into apps.
Yeah. And the only posts that I put on Facebook are just posts like from Instagram that I just automatically post to Facebook. Like I can't remember the last time I just posted something on my Facebook exclusively.
Right. And I do in groups for coaching purposes to contact parents essentially. But yeah, you're right. I kind of started to stop engaging on there and stop posting stuff on there. And yeah, it's just interesting to see how that has changed and will continue to change. But yeah, we're 10, 11 years after the movie came out, and kind of as we talked about on the other podcast, it's still surprisingly relevant. And now what we didn't get into when we were talking about it as a movie were the accuracies or inaccuracies. And you actually might have a better idea than me on what a lot of those are.
A little bit.
They kind of combine and streamline some things, right?
Yeah.
Well, isn't even the whole idea that Mark was so fueled by the X? I mean, that was kind of just to make the movie more interesting, right?
That was more. Yeah, that was more for the story than real life. There was. I mean, the lawsuit is real. Like, you know, the Winklevoss twins are both real people. Eduardo Saverin was a founding member that did kind of get, you know, screwed out.
Railroaded.
Railroaded. Yeah. But basically, from emails that were leaked about it, it was kind of one of these things where, like, they knew they were going to get sued, but they just figured that, well, we're going to make so much money that it doesn't matter. And they kind of do address that in the movies, that it's a speeding ticket. Like, the amount of money that they were going to make from doing what they did was going to be just such an insane amount of money that settling a lawsuit over it, even though it was like hundreds of millions of dollars, that was like, it was worth it.
Oh, huh. Here's a good quote from Sheryl Sandberg, who's like their COO, or at least during 2010 she was. And she says, in real life, he was just sitting around with his friends in front of his computer ordering pizza. Who wants to see that for 2 hours?
Yeah.
So, which kind of speaks to what we've talked about with many, many movies in the past, that real life just kind of happens and isn't that interesting, but you have to then find the story and write the script to make it engaging, and that's what they did. So it's a version of actual events, but it is ultimately just a movie, and real life doesn't quite work that way. It is kind of interesting, too, how we've seen a lot more of Zuckerberg in real life with testifying before Congress and things than we would have ever thought after seeing the movie. Yeah. And Eisenberg playing Zuckerberg is a little more human, if also a little more vile than the real life Zuckerberg. Real life Zuckerberg seems to try and care more about what people think, but he's also a little more robotic and less emotional or whatever.
Yeah, he gets memed to death for like acting like an alien, pretending to be a person, or acting like a robot.
Whereas the Eisenberg character was very human, just a little sociopathic, maybe.
Right, and obviously, you know, a lot of the, you know, Eisenberg portrayal of Zuckerberg, I think, is informed by the Aaron Sorkin screenwriting.
Right.
You know, people don't actually talk like that in real life, and especially Mark Zuckerberg doesn't talk like that in real life.
Oh, right. That's true. He's so clever in the movie because Aaron Sorkin is writing his stuff.
He has all these snappy comebacks and everything.
Aaron Sorkin should have wrote the congressional testimony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although he did have the one, and the word choice isn't that great, but he did have the one kind of quick comeback when the congressman is asking him, like, how the heck do you make money on this thing anyway? And he's just like, well, Congressman, we sell ads.
Yeah.
Like, that was quick-witted-ish, but yeah, definitely not in the way Sorkin would have written it.
And I guess as we're talking about the congressional hearings, we should probably talk about why.
Oh, to give the context of why they were on there in the first place, yeah.
In recent years, Facebook has had a lot of issues with like user privacy, you know, giving other parties access to like your information and your friends' information there was the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal where Cambridge Analytica, like, unbeknownst to users on Facebook, had, millions of users' info and was using it to target political ads. I think what was the name of the documentary, the Netflix documentary about it? The Great Hack. So The Great Hack was a 2019 documentary about the Cambridge Analytica Facebook and how it influenced the 2016 presidential election. It is actually a pretty good movie. I do recommend it. It is kind of interesting to see how influential social media actually is when it comes to things like elections and how much information they actually have on people.
Okay.
It's
87% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Boy, it'll make you want to delete everything.
No, and it sounds like basically a lot of the stuff that we complain about, it's like you agree to when you sign up for your account.
Yes.
So it's like that's why it's not illegal, right?
Right.
But you're agreeing to it, but you're also just like, it's just more convenient to deal with it, and I'm not that concerned.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it ties into, like, you almost hear of, concepts of like, oh, in the future, the government's going to put chips in you. And it's like, no. In the future, you're going to volunteer to have the chip put into you because it's going to be too inconvenient not to have it in you.
Well,
and that's kind of what having a Facebook account is.
And also, they don't have to because you already carry this, and I'm holding up my cell phone. You're already carrying a cell phone around with you everywhere that you go. So,
True.
Location data, just look at, like, the track and trace stuff for COVID-19. Like, social media companies,
right.
Google, the government, like, this maybe sounds a little tinfoil hatty, but they know so much about you. They don't need to put a chip in you
because they can track the data. It's not
right.
about, they're not invading your privacy; they're invading your phone's privacy.
Right, and they don't have to hack you or do anything, surreptitiously. Like, it's all in your user agreements, but who reads them?
Right.
I mean,
right.
I don't. Probably should, but
because it'd be too inconvenient to not be included. But again, what's going to change? Because at the end of the day, so you're going to not agree and not have your smartphone? Well, no. So okay, click.
Right.
Yeah. I guess ultimately there could be if somebody was egregious enough, you would have class action lawsuits, which is kind of what you do end up having, right, against like Cambridge Analytica and places like that. That they basically, and I'm pretty sure the courts kind of agree with that as far as, if a reasonable person would not actually read this, you know what I'm saying? The courts will kind of like, even if you sign a contract, if it's not reasonable that I forget how this works, but I think if they were like saying, you agree to give us your car, and everyone was just clicking through, a judge would throw that out, even if you agreed to it.
Just like the South Park episode.
South Park,
where
yes,
it's
exactly.
like the Apple terms of service says that if you click agree, that you like agree to become part of a human centipede.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you clicked agree. Why do they keep clicking agree? We could kind of speculate here on maybe where we think this technology could go. So where do you see social media being in the next 10 to 20 years, smartphones being in the next 10 to 20 years? What are your predictions here?
I don't see it going anywhere. Facebook, maybe, Facebook proper obviously is a lot older user base now. Like you were talking about before, Gen Z is essentially non-existent on Facebook, or if they are, it's only out of necessity. But Facebook is so big at this point that they can basically afford to do pretty much exactly what they did with Instagram, where any kind of startup that represents any kind of threat to them, like in their market, they have enough money, they can just buy it.
Well, I could see some monopolies getting attacked then in the next 10 to 20 years. Do we have like a Teddy Roosevelt kind of thing come through?
Yeah, like an antitrust thing.
Right, break up Amazon. It's like, okay, you can't be this and this and this. It's like, pick your lane, and then the other thing's got to be a separate company.
Yeah.
Which, again, sounds crazy, but that's exactly what Teddy Roosevelt did with some of those other businesses. Basically, weren't they kind of like vertically integrated in a way that he eliminated? I don't remember the details of all that.
I don't know a ton about that, and it's kind of different with social media too, because it's social media, people are going to gravitate towards one. Like you can't really have 5 different Facebooks that are all the same. Like, obviously like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are, like the big 3 really.
Well, but Facebook owns Instagram. You could basically say you have to sell it or something like that.
Yeah,
and make it a separate entity. Yeah,
but
or how Facebook is involved with logging into apps. You can basically excise that somehow and say, no, you're a social media platform. You're not this element. That element needs to be made. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying this could be a political fight over the next 10 to 20 years as far as splitting up some of these big conglomerations. As far as though usage itself, so I was kind of more, because, you had like the Google Glass a while, at one point, where do phones become glasses, or do those kind of things, evolve, where our phones become so much and replace so many devices from the past, but 20 years from now, have we moved on from that? Maybe there's a way, maybe is it, obviously we already have Google Watches. Is there some other way that maybe 20 years from now, we're getting that same tool? I don't want to say fix, because I think they're obviously, it's a tool that we use.
Yeah.
And maybe it does, maybe everyone's wearing, a Apple Watch, or it's all watches, and we all have the watches, or we all have necklaces, or we all have glasses, and it's all just kind of, there's a hands-free thing that's kind of, I think, relevant and important that I could see becoming bigger.
Yeah, but it also, it's kind of it's a trade-off too, because I mean, and this is just, me thinking about like how I would use something like that, but like I would never buy Google Glasses because the screen resolution isn't as good, and like if I'm trying to look at stuff on my Google Glass, I can't imagine a situation where I'm trying to walk around and like do Google stuff anyway. So why would I not want the bigger, better resolution, not see-through screen of my phone? Why would I trade that for glasses?
Or what if it's contact? I think I actually mentioned this in Magic Carpet Ride, my book, is, well, what if it's contact lenses, and it's all just either like thought operated, contact lenses, where it's just pulling up on literally in its full resolution, taking over your current vision space, or it's augmented reality through contact lenses. I mean, it sounds crazy, but everything's crazy until you have it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it'd be cool. It sounds a little Black Mirror-y.
And that's what I was thinking as well. Yes, correct. For those who haven't seen Black Mirror, it's a show that deals with a lot of these kinds of questions in the not too distant future, and kind of turns them into morality plays. But yeah, it is going to be interesting. And again, you always kind of feel like we're always because we're always in the present, which means we always feel like we have the most technology ever, because we kind of do, and we never know exactly where it's going to go. But it is also interesting too, when you look at, things like Star Trek in Next Generation in the late 80s, early 90s, Picard is, reading off a tablet, and they had, picture screens that would rotate through or play video. And it's like, oh man, that's insane. It's like, no. 20 years later, we'll have it.
Right. Yeah.
With iPads and digital photo screens and stuff. It's like, no, they have it.
I don't know if you watch CinemaSins, the YouTube channel.
Some, yeah.
But they always point out, and I think this is hilarious, but like in futuristic movies, they'll show like holograms, and they always point out like, why would this be a thing? Why would anyone want a hologram that is monochrome, is one color? It's objectively worse than just looking at a TV screen display this thing in 1080p, 4K HD. Why would this hologram ever be a thing? Or like they'll have, like, if they're trying to show something of being like futuristic, they'll have like a glass screen that's like see through, but there's stuff projected on it. It's like, why not just have a flat screen TV that you can? The resolution is objectively better. Why would you not just have a flat screen TV? Like, you're trying to like do this next step up to make it look more futuristic, but it's just worse.
Right. Now I could see, again, I don't know how the technology would work, but what if you had full 4K digital high resolution, looks as good as real life hologram, and you would have like your TV as like a pedestal, and you could watch it from a 360 around, and it's giving you, like, you're watching a football game as if you're there 3D. You could watch it from any angle. You could walk around the quarterback as you're watching the game. Now, that would be different, and that would be, again, sounds crazy, but it's crazy until we have it.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, and then probably the last kind of thing, since we're kind of just using this as an episode to talk about computers in general, you get to the whole, to what extent in the future will we be able to upload our consciousness to computers? And then you get into the whole AI thing, which ties into when we talked about Imitation Game or in Ex Machina on the other podcast. And just, it's interesting to see where that goes. And in the next few decades, we'll get to the point where you could upload a digital copy of your memories and consciousness to the cloud, and that after you die, people could still interact with this AI rendering of you that to them would almost feel exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, and that ties into to Ex Machina. That was our
exactly.
It was my number 3. I don't remember where you had it on your list.
I think at number 9.
But our consensus best movie of the decade from Trackers.
Yes.
But yeah, it deals with AI. And something else, that kind of tangentially related to AI, but that I think is going to have an even bigger impact, especially economically, is automation.
Yeah.
Robots doing jobs that humans do now. There's a really good CGP Grey video called "Humans Need Not Apply" about all of the jobs that robots are already doing or already learning to do. And it's something like 60% of the workforce is like not being done right now, but at least being developed.
Right, because the big one is truck driving.
Yeah, like truck drivers, retail, even things like robot paralegals that can do like a human paralegal. Like, you're limited by your reading speed, and you have to take breaks, and you have to go to the bathroom, and you can you have to eat lunch. And you can only read so much at one time, whereas a computer programmer or a robot doing that exact same job can search for keywords in every single law paper that's ever been published.
Right.
And start, racking and stacking case law. Or they were talking about like a robot barista where, you might have your special coffee shop where you go to and the guy there makes your, special whatever coffee the best way, but most people don't care. Oh, and by the way, this thing's everywhere. So if you live in Los Angeles and you take a trip to Chicago, you can go to a stand that's the same robot, and it knows based on your account exactly how you like your coffee, and it'll make it for you the exact same way. Just little stuff like that. Self-driving cars is a huge one. Imagine every Uber, every taxi, every semi-truck driver, every city bus, no people are operating any of that.
And the point of CGP Gray's video is that this has happened in the past, but that this time's different.
Yeah.
So humans have always had to shift jobs based on changing technologies, but we could be hitting a critical point where there's no new jobs. There's not enough new jobs for humans to migrate to. Where we've always found a new niche, and there's jobs that exist today that didn't exist. There's actually a lot of jobs. You can probably find the percentage somewhere online. Percentage of jobs that people have today that didn't exist 20, 30, 50 years ago. Yeah. But that may run out, and there might not be enough new jobs for a growing population, and we have to figure it out.
The example that he uses is when you use the statement, more technology or better technology means more better jobs for people. That phrase, that sentence sounds like it makes sense to people. However, if you say more cars equals more better jobs for horses,
there you go.
You're saying the same thing. But people are like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, cars are going to replace horses. That they can do so much more. That they can go longer and further. And so why would you think that it would be the same thing for people? If you're automating, if you automate 60% of the economy, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden that 60% of the workforce is all of a sudden going to be able to. I mean, yeah, some of them are going to be able to get other jobs, but not all of them. And then you have this, now it's a huge problem because people are out of work through no fault of their own. The jobs just don't exist.
Right. Basically, in the past, we were the cattle ranchers and the cowboys and the horse trainers. Now we're the horses.
Yep.
And so what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. And that video does a good job of showing exactly how easy it is / will be to automate just a bunch of different jobs that you would have never even considered being like threatened by automation.
Right. The complicated stuff like doctors could be, because a computer can diagnose better.
And he even talks about like, oh, well, it'll free up more people to like, make art and make music. And he says, well, you can't have an art and music based economy, number one. And number two, oh, by the way, robots could do that too. And he even brings up about, this music that you're hearing in the background, it was written by a robot.
Yep. It's going to be interesting, and I don't know. I mean, I think we can always think we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but that bridge might be coming in the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And when we're not ready for it.
Yep.
Fascinating food for thought. Yeah, the internet age is here and will be until the apocalypse hits, I suppose, because it's kind of become a new utility. You talk about like it's as big a deal as when electricity came around.
Right.
That how that was just a game changer. And now when the power goes out, we're basically screwed because our whole society is based around having electricity in our homes. That's what the internet has now become.
Right.
We are now 100% based on, and our economy is based on having access to the internet, this connection of computers worldwide. And so it's that vital.
Well, and there's a lot of people that think that it should be a public utility, that,
right. The city just provides it and you pay your bill to the city.
Right. It should be a municipal thing like your water or your electricity.
Right. Or the government puts it out where just basically everywhere has free public Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
It could just be ubiquitous, and the government just says free public Wi-Fi everywhere because it's that important of a utility to always have access to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, interesting stuff. And next week, we'll be headed back to Africa dealing with child soldiers in Beasts of No Nation.